Last time I was telling you about the Latin word Scotty, meaning an Irishman. Well, now, I'm sure you've heard it said that you should never refer to a Scotsman as Scotch. That's a drink, they say. The correct term is Scots or Scottish. Well, that's all very well, but then why do we have several towns in the north of Ireland with an Irish street or a Scotch street, eh? In most towns you'll have a main street and a high street, a church street, Castle Street maybe, possibly a railway street. But in Dungannon, County Tyrone, Armagh City, and Downpatrick in County Down, among others, you have a Scotch street. It's not called Scots Street or Scottish Street. Armagh and Downpatrick also have an Irish street, while Limavady, County Londonderry, has an Irish Green Street. Downpatrick has an English street as well. But to the best of my knowledge, the Welsh never got in on the act at all. There's never a Welsh street. This all dates back to something called the Plantation of Ulster, which has left us with a bit of a legacy, especially in the north of Ireland. Ulster has always been the most Gaelic part of Ireland and the most resistant to English rule, but after years of bitter warfare, the English finally gained control here too, and the flight of the Earls took place in 1607. The Ulster Gaelic chieftains Hugh O'Neill and Hugh O'Donnell and their close supporters left Ireland by ship to seek help from Spain, which was the superpower of the time. They were destined never to return. The English King James confiscated the lands of the rebels and anyone who had sided with him. He also wanted to reward his faithful English and especially Scots supporters, so they came up with the idea of the plantation, or colonisation really, of the parts of Ulster that had previously been so rebellious. Planters had to be English speaking, not Gaelic speaking, and they had to be Protestant. In a lot of cases, the local Irish population had been deserted by their leaders, were forced off the land they had lived on for centuries, the land given to what they regarded as foreigners, even though the Scots were a related people, and a lot of bitterness began to build up. There weren't too many towns back then, and the land was depopulated after all the fighting there'd been. New towns and garrisons were built where only English was spoken, and English law replaced the Gaelic Brehon law. Maybe something in the region of 80,000 settlers, mostly Presbyterians from Scotland, had come to Ulster by the 1630s. But in 1641, the local Irish rebelled and attacked the Protestant settlements. The English reaction to this was severe, and there were a lot of atrocities on both sides. Protestants fled to the new towns for safety. Added to this mix was Oliver Cromwell and the overthrow of the English king by their own parliament. The Scottish Presbyterian army brought in to quell the rebellion sided with the king, while other defenders sided with Parliament, so that in the end both Catholic Irish and Scots Presbyterians were the losers and became dominated by Anglican English ascendancy. Thousands more fled from a famine in Scotland towards the end of the 17th century, so that Presbyterians became the majority of the Ulster population for the first time, and have been ever since. As the towns grew, eventually they began to have more of a native Irish, in other words Catholic, population. So you'd have a Presbyterian Scotch Street area, probably in the business part of the town, and maybe a Roman Catholic Irish Street, likely in a poorer district. English Street would have represented the dominant Anglican seat of power and government. It's not complicated at all.